Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Dun & Bradstreet webinar on importance of data in the digital transformation strategy. Today's session will be moderated by Mr. Anand Iyer, Director, Operation and Technology, Dun & Bradstreet. Before I introduce to you our moderator and our distinguished speaker, there are a few ground rules. You all have been, the microphone is on mute for every audience. If you have any questions, there is a chat window question with a question mark on in your panel. You can send out all your questions there. After the panel discussion, the moderator will pick up the question and he will answer it there. With that, we will be starting our session soon. Let me just introduce our moderator and the distinguished panels. The session will be moderated by, as I said, Mr. Anand Iyer, Director, Operation and Technology, Dun & Bradstreet, India. Anand Iyer has over 2 decades of experience at technology operation. At Dun & Bradstreet, Anand is responsible for operation for the risk management and the sales and marketing solution divisions. He is also responsible for the overall technology and customer experience function at DNB India. In the past 18 months, Anand has worked on ingesting data through external sources in a sustainable manner, using automation and technology, making DNB India the largest and most comprehensive corporate database in the country. From our distinguished speaker, let me start with Mr. Gautam Datta, Senior Director, Marketing, Siemens Digital Industrial Software. Mr. Datta is a Senior Marketing Director with Siemens Digital Solution Software. Siemens Digital Software, Industry Software delivers next generation solution to help manufacturers transform their operation into digital enterprises. This integrated solution across the entire value chains from initial conceptualized design, manufacturing planning, and execution through service and support help create digital twins of product and plants realizing benefits of digitization like shortening time to market, providing greater production flexibility, and significantly reducing cost. Gautam has more than 30 years of experience in engineering, IT, and PLM industries and has held leadership role in organizations like TCS, IBM, Silicon Graphics, PTC, and ANY Systems. Our next speaker is Mr. Jigar Mehta, Head Analytics and Financial Controller, Aditya Birla Health Insurance. Jigar is a thought leader in data strategy and analytics. In his current role, along with heading finance, he also leads analytics and BIU function and is responsible for organizations' analytics and digital data quotient. In his 15 plus years of experience, he has helped set up and scaled up BI and data science as organization capabilities across companies and leverage technologies to drive innovation, improve customer experience and productivity. Our next speaker is Mr. Ramanathan Arunachalam, Vice President IoT and PED Practice, Inspirus Solutions Limited. Ram is an entrepreneurial-minded and an accomplished senior management professional with 23 plus years of experience and proven track record in IT strategies, global delivery, program management, product development, technology management, automation, transformation, migration, operation management, account management, and executive leadership. With a global experience across APAC, EMEA, and America, his prior experience includes iGate Global Solution, eFunds, HSBC, DataFrac Service in various different management spaces. He currently heads IoT and product engineering delivery practices. Our next speaker is Mr. Abhay Jarkar, VP Global Practice Head, Enterprise Solution, Tata Technologies. Abhay has over 21 years of experience in PLM, PDIT, Digital Experience Enterprise Solution. Currently, he is heading globally the Digital Enterprise Solution Practice Organization for Tata Technologies. Earlier, he was heading Europe and Asia Pacific region for PLM Services Delivery Organization. Armed with rich experience in automotive, aerospace, and medical industries, he has done several large transformation PDIT programs in the area of PLM implementations, large-scale PLM data migration, and support projects in different domains. Our next speaker is Mr. Sundar Subramaniam, President Global Delivery Emphasis. Sundar Subramaniam is responsible for global delivery, starting with our direct core business for FY18. Sundar has in-depth global experiences in the service industry with an outstanding track record in leading and growing small and large business units. In his career spanning over 27 years, he has spearheaded successful global delivery, consulting, operation, and people management functions. Our next speaker is Mr. Subrata Das, Head of Analytics, Ugro Capital Limited. Subrata heads the analytical division of Ugro Capital, where he and his team are a part of a fascinating startup journey towards solving the unsolved needs of the SME sector. Through the use of collective knowledge and technology, Subrata is a seasoned analytics leader, passionate about applying statistical intelligence to solve real-world problems. His career experience of over 15 years covers a diverse spectrum of consumer segment, their financial need, and rigorous data-driven solution across life cycle. With that, I welcome all the speakers and the moderator for this panel discussion today. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you, Noina, for the lovely introductions. And thank you to all the panelists who have taken time out of their busy schedule and decided to kind of attend this webinar for the benefit of all of us, as well as for all the audience who have already joined this webinar. Before I start off, just wanted to quickly give an overview of the format of today's session. I just have about 3 slides that I want to quickly present and set the context for emphasizing the importance of data in the digital transformation strategy. Should not take more than 5 or 7 minutes max. I'll immediately follow that up with not really few questions, but actually questions which more act like certain pointers and some areas that I would want each of you esteemed panelists to give your view and your experience specifically from your function as well as your industry perspective. I believe that will be very useful for the audience and for all of us to get a very well-rounded view. For the entire audience, I just want to let know that we have a very exciting set of panelists today. As Noina has already introduced them, we have people from the software design and engineering sectors, which bring with them expertise on a completely different level. From there to panelists who are from the IT and ITES industries to panelists from the health insurance as well as the the NBFC sectors. So it's a very wide-ranging set of panelists that we have today, and therefore a wide-ranging set of experience as well. And I'm hoping that the audience will benefit with from such a set of insights that the panelists will bring onto the table. Right. So I'll quickly start off. I promise I will not have too many slides to talk about. I hope everyone can see the slide in front of you. So basically, today's theme is all about importance of data in digital transformation. As we all know, digital transformation has been the buzzword almost pretty much in the last decade, right? Started very early on in 2010, but kind of really picked up steam in the early part of the decade, and kind of really full-fledged was in its element in the latter part of the decade as well. 2010 to 2020 indeed will not be wrong if someone says it is the decade of digital transformation. A lot of profile changes that the industry saw, and when I say profile changes, let me explain what I mean. Before 2010, the most widely sold software per se in the world was still an RDBMS database, right? It was the oracles of the world, and then maturity in terms of if all of us know the Gartner hype cycle, how different products kind of came on, and then the database itself got a little bit mature with a lot of validations put in, be it typically your MS SQLs and oracles of the world, or you also had newer flavors of structured, unstructured database flavors kind of coming in. But slowly from 2010 onwards, that entire trend has seen a change. And today, as we stand, it will not be wrong to say, and rightfully so, that the most widely sold software today in terms of the spend by enterprises is actually the CRM software, right? And rightfully so, because all of the systems, the business processes should, and rightfully so, should revolve around the customer, and therefore it's not a surprise that CRM is actually the most heaviest and then the maximum spent from enterprises in terms of the software today. With that, what has come to the fore and what has come to the surface is a lot of data that these systems are able to capture over a period of time as well as real time, depending on which industry and which sector and which function you're part of. And suddenly the question has come before all of us as to what to do with this data. The last second half of the decade, from 2015 onwards, has definitely seen a very strong and a very sure emergence of analytics and analysis of data. And I always come across people who kind of get confused between analysis and analytics. All these point to one clear thing, and that is that in the industry 4.0, as we call it in terms of this age and the next decade as well, we have definitely crossed the milestone of digitizing a lot of business processes. So it's not really wrong to say that digital transformation is now at its peak. A lot of companies, a lot of processes are either already undergone there and going to the second level of maturity, or are undergoing that in full speed. And therefore, all these systems, all this digitization does one side effect to any organization, and that is it produces megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes, and petabytes of data. Right? I would not be surprised, and one of the senior industry persons that I met in one of the other webinars last week was telling me, in fact, it was a question from him which said that today, if CRM is the most spent in terms of expenses, the most spent software that an enterprise spends on, will that change to storage and data systems? And it's a very valid question, because the kind of data that all enterprises are producing is enormous. And with that in mind, today's theme of importance of data and how to get insights from data through the digital transformation process in order to kind of really exploit the dollars that we've put in the digital transformation is what we're going to talk about, right? Quickly moving on, I just want to put some figures on the ground, and this is some really latest figures that I've been able to gather up from our economic research team in Dun & Bradstreet, and we always keep continuous track of this. Is that 2 to 3 studies that has been done, and I have the sources for all these, so very happy to share it with all of you. It's very clear that an average business has got the potential to lose up to 30% of its revenues just because of having bad data, and these are in multiple areas, in multiple facets, be it in a manufacturing industry in terms of inventory, or in terms of production planning, in terms of service industries where you have the inefficient business processes, or even in sales and marketing where the enterprise is really not having its arms around the entire customer and the relationships that the customer has with its own subsidiaries and parent corporations, and having inefficient sales teams kind of trying to address the needs of these customers. So there are multiple areas that kind of contribute to up to about 30% of revenues in losses because of an enterprise having bad data. In terms of India specifically, as per Gartner's 2019 report, the impact is slated to anywhere between $9.7 million to about $14.2 million annually on most of the enterprises which are covered in the Indian continent. That, I believe, is a very big figure, and that's the money that is being, in my view, left on the table. In terms of moving westwards in the US economy, at least the same estimate is around $3 trillion per annum, simply because the West is slightly ahead in terms of digital transformation currently. A lot of businesses out there already have this, but there is still a lot of bad data that these organizations have, and the effort of recognizing the importance of eliminating bad data and making sure we have good data, lean data, and more importantly, connected data is something that people have started to realize. As I said, the 3 trillion is actually on account of either lost revenue, because you've not been able to address the customer's concerns. It could be either due to bad quality of your services or addressing the wrong customer, wrong needs. It's because of poor decisions, inefficiency, legal and non-compliance penalties that are levied on US, and we all know in US the regulatory regime is very strict in terms of levying penalties, and of course a lot of unnecessary technology costs as well, which is now beginning to kind of become. It was probably earlier insignificant, but now it's beginning to become a bit more pronounced. So if you look at the first three boxes, on an average, the cost of having one record with bad data is estimated to be around $100 per record. And this is again, not just India; it's at a worldwide level, and this obviously has a lot of recurring as well as downstream damages, which is kind of added to the number of about approximately $100 per record. Yeah, so that's the economic impact of bad data, and this is a real problem. Why? Because when you look at this in the context of what I said earlier, as to more and more digitization is leading to generation of petabytes and petabytes of data, you can imagine that if those petabytes of data are actually bad, then you're actually producing a lot of bad data. In that sense, this figure, this losses, seems to be only going upwards if we don't address this problem very soon. And therefore, again, quoting some of the research that we've done from third-party agencies, according to Forbes and KPMG Global CEO Outlook, 84% of the CEOs are really concerned about the quality of data that comes in front of them, and basis which they take decisions, which means that there have been one or more instances that they themselves have personally encountered where they have found out that the data is not up to standards. And therefore, there is a kind of a crisis in the information trust that's happened because of this poor data. And bad data and poor data has its own definition, in the sense that it's not just that you have a wrong value in a field to go to the lowermost denomination. What it means is sometimes the data is correct, but they are disparate, they're not connected. Or sometimes you're not able to make sense of the data that you have in one system with the data that you have in another system and actually gather business insights from them, right? So all this is also part of bad data, right? According to some very popular and credible magazines, specifically My Customer, which is completely to do with 360-degree view of the customer and the services that they require. and also The Drum, which is one of the leading marketing magazines in the UK. About 45% of customers change loyalty, right, if they are contacted through blocked me. So what does that mean? And this is happening in India, right, with TRAI putting a lot of regulations on telecalling and trying to have sensitive personal data stored in your organization. And we've also got the India Data Privacy Act coming in very soon. This means that there is enough evidence on the ground that if a customer says, please do not interact with me or interface with me in this manner, and if you do not capture that data well, and more importantly, bring that data up in a timely manner when you are trying to contact that customer, right, then you've lost that customer. That's what this means. And they've also kind of done a research to understand that about 40% of leads which are generated due to the conventional means will fail simply because we are not able to make sense of various angles of data which the customer is giving us in various channels, through various channels and various means, but we are failing at the enterprise level, or at least is not doing as good a job as we should be, and therefore are not able to kind of generate the right signals, which lead to certain leads getting failed. Yeah. And in terms of of course, Gartner predictions are something which all of us kind of look at very eagerly. What Gartner has predicted is in the next couple of years, a lot of automation in the data management will happen, right? And the reason for that is because the speed at which the data is being generated in a lot of industries and in a lot of areas, humans who are operating that data are not able to make bad data into good data, and therefore that traffic and that volume requires a lot of business rules and automation. And specifically nowadays when we talk about automation, they're talking about intelligent automation or even AI enabled automation to try and make sense of that data and keep it, catalog it, organize it in such a way that when you require it at the right moment, you're able to take benefit of it, right? And therefore they're saying that this is going to be so pronounced that a lot of IT specialists who are generally looking at data will kind of no longer be required, at least to the extent of 20%. A lot of enterprises who are using data lakes and have projects around data warehouses and data hubs, and I know one of the speakers that we spoke to earlier will definitely throw some light on that. It is predicted that in the next year itself, by getting all the data together, and therefore that also forces you to establish linkages between these data, because you can't store duplicate data all the time. This linking and linkages itself will help you or help enterprises get a very cohesive strategy in place, get you business insights, so that you're able to support at least more than 30% more use cases than your nearest competitor. And the last one, what Gartner says is a lot of organizations which are able to connect, link, and optimize the data integration process will reduce the time to deliver the data by another 30%. And when you say deliver the data, it's not that the customers are waiting for data, it's your own internal departments also who are waiting to get that data in the right manner so that they can take right business decisions. And that itself will kind of make sure that the enterprise do not spend a lot of resources on wasteful expenditures or expenditures that really don't help the customer. Yeah. And therefore, I'll just quickly end by saying that from a DNB perspective, there are the pillars of digital transformation has kept on changing. Earlier when it started, the journey started, the pillars were slightly different, but I'm kind of listing down about 4 pillars which assume that certain level of maturity has already been achieved, and therefore from an impact perspective, from therefore a customer perspective, what I'm saying is for a successful digital transformation, it's now best to choose a business process which has got customer at the center to maximize the impact. So if you're taking a business process which you feel is not really serving the customer well, take that business process first, because if you do that, then the digital transformation and the capturing of data that you will do will give you business insights to serve the customer in a better manner. Yeah. Try our new systems to establish governance around customer service as well, because sometimes people tend to go in for business process reengineering, and therefore select systems where certain governances and processes are not available or have not been put in. One of the lessons that we've learned also by talking to a lot of our customers is, after putting a lot of systems through the digital transformation projects, what they miss out on is putting effective governance procedures, and that they realize it later. So if you could do that right at the time when you're implementing this, that makes a lot of sense for a digital transformation project. Transformation, again, need not be big bang. This is something that we've seen time and again. Yes, you can look at a bigger business process, but if the situation doesn't allow you to do a big project, it's perfectly okay, because today's systems support that. You can do incremental updates, you can do incremental business process reengineering, and kind of make sure that slowly and steadily, in the agile manner, you're able to kind of really touch the customer where it really matters, right? And last but not the least, while doing any digital transformation, what we've also seen is it is important to look at the corresponding data which is touched or generated by the business process. And therefore, the digital transformation projects must ensure that leaders are able to cleanse and connect different data structures across the enterprise and kind of bring them into, if possible, or if required, the data lakes or the data warehouses that I talked about earlier. These data must be cleansed in such a way that they are all almost forming part of an orchestra. It's like a symphony which kind of seamlessly migrates into new systems. Because if you don't, and if the new business process doesn't take into consideration the various business flows that will come in, and the quality and governance of the data is not really taken care, then it kind of negates the investment that we're doing in digital transformation projects, and therefore undermine the entire initiative. So that's pretty much, setting the context in terms of what's, our view in terms of what we see in the world out there through our various customers, corporates, as well as banks and various other industries, how they are implementing digital transformation projects and how they are looking at the whole spectrum and the benefits that they're getting out of it. With that, I would like to end my time for setting the context. At this point of time, I'll just take a quick pause and just make sure that everybody was able to see the presentation, especially the panelists, and that I'm still clearly audible, because sometimes the network kind of just falls through.
Yeah, we could see and hear clearly, Anand.
Thank you so much. Thank you for confirming. With that, I would straight away jump into a good discussion. We still have about a good 45-50 minutes to healthily discuss and have enough time, to talk about some points which are very unique to all our different industries. I'd like to straight away jump into for my first question to Mr. Gautam Datta, who's the Senior Director Marketing for Siemens Digital Industry Software. In case for people who joined in late, Noina had introduced what Siemens Digital Industry Software does, and SDIS basically manages a lot of critical software applications across aerospace, defense, automotive, and transportation, and they actually develop cutting-edge software for critical applications, including drones, aircrafts, design of revolutionary cooling ducts, etc. And therefore, my first question to Gautam. Gautam, I hope you're able to hear me clearly.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you're perfectly audible, Gautam. Thanks for the confirmation. I just have, the first question for you. SDIS basically partners with global organizations across various industries, right, to power a lot of offerings through next generation design and critical software, right? And therefore you implement a lot of projects for your customers in that sense. What is your experience on your customers in terms of how they implement their digital transformation projects, and do they capture data or maintain data in the right manner? And if not, then has that resulted in your digital transformation that you do for them a little bit more difficult or lengthy?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I understand the question from the point of view of how data could be more clear, succinct, and transparently available to where it is meant to be. That's the kind of question. And yes, our experience primarily is from the point of view of design and manufacturing and product development companies cutting across all the verticals, as you said, from aerospace, automotive, machinery, medical devices and infrastructure, etc. I would like to elevate the word data and what it expands in our mind when we think of the word called data. I would like to elevate that word to intelligence. Essentially, data is important, but data in its own form, in its basic form, perhaps is not as critical to the customer base that we serve as it is for intelligence. And when we say intelligence, it means the intelligence of the machine, of the parts, of the material, of the products, of the supply chain, and the intelligence that we can understand, we can contextualize, which comes in the form of data. I hope I'm making sense here, because at the end of the day, you also mentioned things like hardware and software and implementing those in order to get the data at the right place at the right time. I would elevate that entire perspective to it's not about hardware and software. It is about the processes that get practically realized by the hardware and software. And it is not data, it is the elevated form of data converted to information, converted to knowledge, which collectively gives us the intelligence to serve the purpose it is meant to be. Data in itself has no meaning, and generating data as a job or a task has no meaning unless it has a purpose. That's the point I'm trying to make. And when you say bad data or wrong data, it means either it is it has got faults in it, it is not complete, or it is wrong data coming to. Wrong data would mean data coming to a person who cannot use it. Even that could be a wrong data. So it's a combination of all that creates a bad data. So yes, the answer to that question that you asked is, we work with our customers across verticals to ensure that data related to coming from machines, parts, materials, products, as I mentioned, from supply chain, etc., can get converted and get contextualized in a proper way so that it becomes a form of intelligence. And when we speak about things like IoT ready machine or IIoT or IoT ready products, essentially it means that it gives me a closed loop feedback from the shop floor. It gives me a closed loop feedback from the field, with which I can, the data that I receive, either I take decisions based on process data in the form of analytics, or I feed the data back to simulate and experiment and continue to improve, which is the intent of any manufacturing and product development organization. So we do have situations where many of our customers, and I will speak in context of India, where 90% plus manufacturing belongs to what we call the small and medium business enterprises, who are essentially reluctant to begin with in terms of investment, which would give them this new way of doing work. It is a matter of discussion with them as to what is the right data, contextual data that they need to have, so that that intelligence can help them make the right decision. And decisions about design, decisions about manufacturing. And that's where we are now in discussions with this community. Our research in India shows that most of the SMEs today want to know what is happening where, so that they are on top of the ground truth, or the single source of truth. And when we say it's a single source of truth, it also means that what you mentioned as bad data cannot be part of that, because it is a single source of truth, within quotes. Truth is not bad. Truth is always good. We are not necessarily always we are ready to face it, but truth is always good. So based on those, the decisions that we take, the closed loop quality, the closed loop manufacturing, these are the areas of work where such intelligence based on the appropriate data, contextualized data, becomes important. Does that answer your question?
It does, Gautam, and in fact, it answers very beautifully, if I may say so. I think, when you said that you would want to elevate the word data from data all the way to information to insights to actually intelligence, right? That also kind of vindicated what the entire industry is going through, which is we are moving away from typically automation to what we call digital transformation, but more importantly, we're moving to a world where all these have to essentially then give out something of benefit, and that benefit is the intelligence that you talked about. And so rightly put that, when you say that most of the SMEs want to know what's happening where, essentially they are looking for insights on their own internal processes, insights on what's happening on the market. So it beautifully answers my question, Gautam. Thank you so much. And that's that's the expertise and the experience that's really coming out, folks. I mean, and that's why I said, I'm really excited by the panel that we have. Thank you so much, Gautam. I will circle back to you on a couple of more questions. But for now, I will quickly move on. But before I do, I already have a couple of questions from the audience on what I spoke about earlier, and also what Gautam spoke about. I would request the audience to identify yourself with your name, your company, as well as your designation, so that we know what's the context behind you asking the question, and hopefully the panel speakers can answer your question in a better fashion. Thank you so much. Moving on, I would now want to move on from Gautam to Jigar, and Jigar kind of is definitely going to bring us a completely fresh perspective, because he is the finance controller at Aditya Birla Health Insurance, and therefore for someone who comes from a purely finance function, but one who still understands end to end about digital transformation projects and the benefits that it brings to the enterprise, as well as the enterprise's customers. So Jigar, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. A question to you on specifically Aditya Birla Health Insurance. What is your experience in terms of optimization of business processes, digitization of business processes that ABA Health Insurance has gone through? The question to you is, has that resulted in your view better customer satisfaction, and has that helped in kind of organizing and cataloging data in the right manner? Was that a necessary, or was that just a byproduct in the entire digital transformation? If you could help us with a couple of examples, that would be really great. Jigar, we can't hear you. I hope you're not on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're perfectly audible. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. So the way when we look at our retail customers, right, we look at our data governance in terms of a data completeness index. Then within the completeness, what is the data quality index, and how do we keep on continuously do the data augmentation, right, across various customer touch points and customer lifecycle. So we look at our data and catalog in various data entities. Like for example, it could be customer demographics, claims related data, health data, wellness related data, service and interaction related data that we may collect across various platforms, including our physical touch points like branches or digital touch points, right? Like app, portal, chatbot, WhatsApp. How do we sort of create a one view and keep on improving the data quality and completeness index, and also bring in a lot of unstructured data? Could be from the voice and speech analytics, it could be images and video based data, but we are also trying to look at how do we keep on bringing in unstructured data to improve our processes and improve customer experiences continuously. So I want to give a couple of examples. For example, in our claims process, right? We started by digitizing data of our claims bills, which runs into tens and fifties of pages using AI-based OCR technique. And as a result of that, it has really not only improved our efficiency, but also improved our customer experience. We are able to process our claims much better, and also helped in our overall risk management by helping us better adjudicate and look at our potential frauds that may happen in adjudicating claims, and that so the impact on business processes and business and outcomes is obviously unparalleled when we start using data analytics. And how do we also collect data using the digital footprint? That really helps.
Great. Thanks, Jigar. And just as a quick follow-up, since you're collecting so much of data, and obviously insurance, we all know today medical insurance and health insurance is something which is really spreading on a completely widespread level, COVID-19 notwithstanding. How do you manage, the hordes and hordes of data that a health insurance company must be collecting? And more importantly, the question is, what do you do, or what does AB Health Insurance does to get any insights from the data? Because in health insurance, you have your actuaries, you have so much of analysis being done on who should be given what premium. And nowadays, all of us here, most of us in the audience today, I'm sure, has health insurance of some kind or the other, and we always see that it's so dynamic, it's so changing. They look at not just what we claimed last year, but what we're doing now. What's my health profile? Am I exercising? Am I not exercising? So much of data. I mean, how do you manage it, and how do you make sense out of it?
Yeah, so we have our entire data warehouse, and we then look at arranging a lot of data marts, and obviously we also synchronize all our data marts and data lakes to at some point in time we may also have a one view. For example, when we look at pricing related data or claims related data, we may also look at a lot of data which may come from customer demographics or hospital related data or customer health related data. So we create one view and look at these data points, which may also serve the needs of our claims team or underwriting team, or also our actuarial team. So we then look at how do we keep on augmenting this data internally through our app or through some health related questionnaires, or externally through some external agencies. So there are various mechanisms how do we keep on augmenting the data. And obviously the customer also goes and do their free health checkup, which helps us augment this data, which helps us further sort of engage with them on their health improvement journey. So these are all the tools and leverages that we have to manage the customer health, and it helps in retention as well as future pricing and claims management as a way forward. And yeah, then we sort of continuously create dashboards, and that's through our data warehouse, and give outliers and to the right stakeholders so that they can assess the risk and the business outcomes regularly. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jigar. Just one quick follow-up again on that, and I'll move on. And this is purely from a finance angle, because we want to definitely get your insights from a finance perspective. I'm a diehard technologist, right? So every time my finance guy tells me that, Anand comes with a new project and there goes a lot of, dollars down the drain, I'm just going to spend a lot of money. So you would have obviously seen a lot of money being spent on these digital transformation projects purely from a balance sheet perspective. Have you seen benefits of those coming out and reflecting actually in the balance sheet? I mean, what kind of benefits you've seen purely from a balance sheet perspective?
Yeah. So definitely we see that, when we are able to use data analytics better and invest in a lot of things, we see that the customer retention is much better than otherwise. Our claims ratio, if we when we use our predictor model for investigating claims, we are able to catch hold of claims and frauds which should not have been processed, which otherwise would have been processed by manual eyes. We see that there is a 5% improvement in claims ratio also,
Wow.
profitability, because of better use of data and predictive models and segmentation. Yeah.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. For everybody in the audience, coming directly from a finance angle, no technology involved here. Customer retention and revenues are directly positively impacted. If one manages, digital transformation projects better and the connected data also better. Thanks a lot, Jigar. Moving on quickly, I'm moving on to Mr. Ramanathan Arunachalam, or Ram for short. Who heads the IoT and PED practice and is the Vice President in Inspiris Solutions. So Ram, welcome to the webinar. I know that Inspiris, has got a very wide range of services, including enterprise security, risk, cloud and IoT services, infrastructure, product engineering, etc. And I know that your special interest obviously lies in IoT and PED practices. A specific question for you in helping your customers implement digital transformation projects, and where IoT is used as a means to capture data, right? The question to you is, when you're capturing this data real time, getting so much of data with the objective of analyzing trends and insights in the data, how do you manage the data transformation in your customer's enterprise when you're doing the digital transformation project? Do you see a clash between conventionally what they have already stored the data and managing the data, and the elevated data, as even Gautam said earlier, through the IoT that might come? How do you manage these both?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, DNB, for this opportunity, and thanks for the introduction. Yeah, okay, I will jump on to the answer. So, as we all know, data is the new oil of the digital economy. So, I mean, they see it as a more than a cost center. Currently it has been seen as a profit center for every company as they start, treating the data as their corporate asset. Actually, they are looking at data as corporate assets, which really helps in informed decision making, as rightly said before. Also, in cross-selling, upselling, and customer service improvements, retentions, or coming up with new products, services in the market, or new business models, and so on and so forth. So data has, almost become the factor of rewriting today's business. So as we process, betabytes, exabytes, and zettabytes of data, which really forms the data lake, which has got both structured and unstructured data from various sources, through which, using machine learning and analytics, we derive it actually that helps businesses in making right decisions. As companies, start focusing on a digital transformation journey, these two factors of data and analytics are two important aspects, and they have become the topmost priority, in every organization, be it an internal or external. It's playing a major role in making decisions, this data and analytics. So I saw some of the predictions you gave, like, even by last October, I believe, the International Data Corporation has predicted, saying that, the spend on digital transformation would be somewhere around 2.3 trillion in 2023, which definitely brings in the importance for data accuracy, data governance, and data strategies, which has become must for every organization, and that has taken precedence. So, I mean, mainly on, to answer your question, why we need a data strategy, right? There should be a data strategy for sure. So as the organizations, they start considering data as their corporate assets, right? So an effective data strategy should be in place, especially to ensure the data is standardized, and methods, services, and patterns and procedures, especially to from various, and then integrate it, and storage of data, security of data, and data quality, where cleansing of data, as you rightly mentioned, data accuracy is important, and managing of data management and monitoring of data, and analysis on data, and how it is being consumed, and data usage, and so on and so forth, actually. So apart from this, I see one of the very important essential part of digital transformation should be the data governance, which is very important. Where we have to ensure compliance requirements, then change management procedures, and other data maintenance and accessibility, those kind of information. So at Inspirysys, we have various different practices, focused on product engineering, and they're focused mainly on Industry 4.0 technology and IoT, and we do have specialized automotive practice, amongst other infra and security services. So yeah, we have been helping our customers, working with our customers across and verticals, on their digital transformation journey, in the lines of business activities or functions, or I would say business models, processes, productivity improvements, and the ecosystem kind of a thing. So as a trusted technology partner, we have been involved right from the initial stages of their journey, especially in the areas of where we are helping is robotics, process automation, industrial IoT, cloud computing, analytics, then artificial intelligence, machine learning, and augmented reality. These are all the areas we are helping our customers. So as part of our IoT offerings, we have been servicing quite a lot of customers, especially in the industrial IoT area. So few things which I can say is then gas and compressed air flow systems, and water flow monitoring systems, and container yard management systems, and IoT based remote transformer asset monitoring systems, and so on and so forth, actually. So quite a lot of interest has been shown by the customers, looking at the benefits this transformation can bring to their organization. They are very keen on making use of this data effectively to make some informed decisions, which also brings a lot of productivity improvement and data accuracy, and of course quite a lot of Thanks.
Right. Thanks, Ram. We definitely couple of words we lost because of probably some kind of network issues. But what I heard you say, we heard the majority part of what you said. Essentially, You're saying that one important statement that you made is the spend on digital transformation is definitely going to hit close to about $2.5 trillion, and one of the things then in your experience you said that data governance is something very important, because once you take care of the compliance requirements and also making sure that data doesn't remain data, but actually data transforms to more insightful intelligence that the enterprise requires, then those are the main things which are required for the success of a digital transformation. So thanks for that insight, Ram. Really appreciate that. Moving on, I'll move on to Abhay Zarkar, who is the Vice President and the Global Practice Head for Enterprise Solutions at Tata Technologies. And Abhay, again, Tata Technologies is involved in providing a lot of engineering, R&D, and PLM services across various industries. What really interested me is that Tata Technologies is providing a lot of services around connected enterprise IT solutions across automotive, aerospace, and defense industries. And in that, when you mentioned connected enterprise IT, right? Obviously, this leads on to a lot of transformation projects that you do for your customers. My very straightforward and simple question to you is, in so many projects that you've seen, implementing for your customers as well as probably for internally as well, what are the 2 or 3 main components that you've seen which, if taken care right at the beginning of the project, that kind of result into a successful digital transformation for your end customers?
Yeah, thanks Anand, and thanks DNB for providing me an opportunity to just share my views. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you're perfectly fine, Abhay, thanks.
Yeah, Anand, and as you rightly said, we are helping manufacturing industry, specifically in automotive, aerospace, and industrial heavy machining around the globe. In our experience, specifically in last 20-25 years, we have been interacting with different kind of customers with different maturity, right? Each customer is different, be it greenfield or brownfield implementation of these technologies, but each customer brings in their own flavor, right? I can give you a couple of examples, right? I think we are the only organization in the world who are fortunate enough to help and work with almost 15 EV startup companies to really help bring a fresh new look in the market, right? From an EV perspective, right? We help them to design as well as help them to implement the technologies. So really looking at the thought process which they are bringing on the table, and of course if you look at the real leaders in terms of brownfield, be it at automotive, at aerospace, we had the opportunity to work closely with them to help in their digital transformation journey, right? The thought process, the mindset, right? Everything is drastically different, right? But the goal is still common, right? If you really ask me 2 or 3 important, critical points in digital transformation for any particular organization, doesn't matter at what maturity stage they are. First one is understanding why of the digital transformation, right? It's very, very important to have the strategic levers aligned company-wide and program-wide. Digital transformation is not at individual business unit or business domain, kind of project. It is a company-wide program, right? So it is very, very important to understand why digital transformation. I can give you a couple of examples, right? So, in China, for one of the EV startup companies which we were working on, their goal was very clear, right? They at the start of the beginning, they were only 4 people, right? With founder, CEO, and couple of other senior people, right? We had the opportunity to start interacting with them when they were only 4 people. Right now, of course, they have brought in a vehicle in less than 20 months on the road, right? So their goal or their vision was very clear. They wanted to call themselves as user-driven organization, right? Or user experience company. They did not want to call themselves as car manufacturing company, right? So the vision itself was different, right? The entire, business processes were laid down based on the vision, and everybody were singing kind of same song, right? So that is one example, right? Why digital transformation? Now, of course, steering innovation was another important factor. In your presentation, Anand, you mentioned that customer centricity is one of the digital pillar, right? So based on these different customers which we are interacting, one of the leading company in North America, automotive giant, right? Their goal was customer centricity, right? Their entire focus was we should be customer centricity in the digital transformation. That's the focus. Any dollar spent, any single dollar spent in the portfolio of initiatives which the current IT is taking up as far as their digital transformation, everything has to link to the why. That is customer centricity is the goal of that organization, right? So another example in aerospace, Anand, just to explore and give the views. Again, a leading aerospace company. Their goal is, of course, how do I bring in data monetization? And of course, how do I bring in co-development and integration, right? From an industrialization driver, right? It is very, very important to understand this concept, right? So today in this leading aerospace company, you name it, they have all technologies, right? Different kind of PLMs, right? It doesn't matter what PLM platform which you are talking about, but still the industrialization driver, co-development and integration, the focus they were giving, because really they wanted to cut the time to market, right? They wanted to make sure that the engineering and manufacturing team as well as the R&D team all work in cohesion, right? The data which we are calling that as digital data thread, right? Digital data thread is an important element in this overall, transformation, digital transformation journey, which everybody talked about, right? So it is absolutely important. So to answer your question, understanding why digital, why digital transformation, defining the strategic levers of the project is very, very important, right, at organization level. Of course, the second point is well thought out organization change management strategy and stakeholder management. This is also a very, very important factor which plays in such large programs, right? There are many, many factors which one needs to consider. The people, the culture, their core competencies, what skills we need to develop. Entire organization change management strategy and stakeholder management is the second point. I think it's very, very important, which one needs to consider. And perhaps the third, which if I want to call it out, aligning the current IT roadmap within an organization with the overall digital transformation program which one is planning, right? In your slide, Anand, you have also mentioned that digital transformation should not be a big bang, or it's okay if it is not big bang, right? I think that's absolutely spot on. When I'm saying that aligning current IT initiatives with the digital transformation roadmap, the point here is exactly the same thing, right? One need not, take digital transformation as a big bang project, right? They can take small initiatives, but it is extremely, extremely critical that the focus should be on fundamental business operations, which could offer significant business value when digitally transformed. So I guess, these are 2 or 3 important, factors everyone needs to consider. Just to summarize, why digital transformation, every step, everything which one needs to take should be aligning to this bigger goal. Second, well thought out organization change management and strategy and stakeholder management, be it internal or external. Of course, third one is aligning, current IT roadmap with the overall why of digital transformation, right? I think these are 2 or 3 very, very critical, factors. I hope I answered your question, Anand.
Absolutely, Abhay, spot on. As you rightly said, all these 3 main factors are definitely key. And when we talk to our customers as well, we've seen this time and again. These are critical components to kind of make sure that the transformation projects does not get kind of stuck up and kind of result into failure. Absolutely right. Thanks a lot for that. Moving on, I'll move on to Sundar Subramaniam, who's the president for Mphasis and handles global delivery across Mphasis. Sundar, thanks a lot for joining the webinar. Mphasis obviously, provides a lot of next-gen solutions to accelerate digital transformation across a lot of your customers, which are spread across, multiple industries, right? Because Mphasis is a global IT and ITS player. With such a wide variety of projects which are being executed in digital transformation by Mphasis, can you tell us, which are the ones that, that come to your mind, which have been very difficult to execute and why? Because we are all talking about what are the key components of making a transformation project successful. But I think it's also important to understand why certain projects are very challenging or very difficult to execute so that we know what to avoid. So, I'm asking that question with that concept in mind. Sundar, we can't hear you, so I hope you're not put yourself on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks for having me in the first place. So thank you so much. A great question, Anand. Before that, I want to really touch on few things before I answer this question. Sure. Because when we talk about the digital transformation across the board, and I don't think anybody really even thinks it is not important. I think across the world, people think it is here and it is here to stay, and we need to get further in that. And what has happened in the current situation, particularly with this COVID, has really accelerated it. Just to give an example, I was reading this thing this morning. The world e-commerce, the US e-commerce was at about 5% in 2009 of the total retail. And in 2014, it was at about 10%. And 2019, it was at about 15%. It was estimated to be 12%, but it was 15%. But in the last 3 months of this year, in 2020, it is at about 35%. This is what this pandemic has done to the e-commerce. And when we talk about e-commerce, we are talking about the digital transformation, and this is across the board. Every day when you really look at Netflix, and Netflix uses totally around 19,000 years of movies and or serials are getting streamed on Netflix platform alone. Again, this is a pre-COVID data. Post-COVID, we just don't know. Maybe it has doubled. Who knows? It has really doubled. So everyone, so it is here to stay, and it has gone into a rapid acceleration at this point of time. I think for us in the technology business, it's a good news. So this the rapid acceleration is the good news. Nothing else is the good news. Rapid acceleration is a very good news. So what we are really looking at is that we look at the customer things. Really, the challenges are that one is that, as I think you talked about it, and I think a lot of panelists also talked about is that we keep the customer as a central point of focus in all our discussion with our customer, their end customers. So we take a customer-centric view and say in the customer-centric world, before that, stepping back in the digital world, whether you take a Netflix or a Flipkart or an Amazon or even our, the UPI, that is the Google Pay and RuPay are all sitting on the UPI. The customer is the center. It knows so much about you. It knows so much about your personalized data. So when you take a customer-centric view, the personalization becomes key, and personalization needs data. So we start driving from that. So to a large extent, when the customer, one of the biggest challenges that we have really seen is that the customers, a lot of customers go with the traditional mindset and say that, hey, this is the size of data this I have, there's so many applications I have, and it is, and how much it's going to cost me, how long it is going to change for me to modernize it. We said, hold on, we don't really have to do the entire thing upfront. We don't really need to really get into the big bang. For that, you can really start with small chewable bites. So you start with the customer end point of view, what we call as a front to back strategy, and see what is that we need for the customer and what is going to derive value for that customer. And for that, what is the data that is required so that you can personalize this thing for the customer. And then we go to the backend legacy data and see what needs to be done there. So we, instead of going from back to the front, we move from front to the back. That is one of the big things that we have really done for the customer. Number one. The second thing is that many customers, the different customers are at very different maturity levels. Some have a very good data governance. Some know the important parts, right? The content, the cataloging the content, what is that you have, and the consumption, and the data governance. Some customers, the matured customers, have these 4 pillars right, or at least it is at a different state. But when it comes to customers who are not really matured, they may not even know where the data is. Believe it or not, a lot of data still lies in Excel sheets. They may not even know where the data is. So the struggle starts from there. So we start from there. We said that for this minimum set of data, where do we go and obtain the data? How this data, we just go and do the model the data and catalog the data. Then we say who should really access it, and then build a data governance policies around it. So we work on these 2 things. And the third important thing is that your expectations out of the data. See, when you're and the general belief is that when you get into the machine learning models, newer models you implement, you can get a tremendous amount of benefits. The benefits depends on the kind of data that you have and how good the data is. And again, it also depends on what kind of hypothesis with which you are approaching the data. If the hypothesis is not right, or if the data is not really right, then things will not really work. So many times what we tell our customers is that this is not like saying from A to B, you directly go there. From A to B, you may have a lot of steps. So can we really co-invest in it? Can we really collaborate and partnership? So the customer becomes part of the team in this entire thing. So we do this approach to really handle a lot of challenges. The last and one of the most important challenges is that when the customers start working just on the back end on the legacy side all the time, it is time consuming, and they also lose their budget. So by the time the budget is lost and you don't have the benefits for the end customer, so the entire purpose gets lost. So we play that role of saying that, hey, what are the top 3 things, and then from there we go there. That's what we do, Anand. I don't know if I answered your question fully.
No, you absolutely did, Sundar. I think these are obviously insights that are coming from years and years of project management as well as digital transformation projects that you have done through Mphasis for your customers, and that's exactly what this webinar is all about. So thanks a lot for sharing that insights. I'll quickly move on to Subrata, the last of our panelists, but obviously a very different perspective that he will bring to the table, because Subrata is actually head of the analytics segment at Ugrow Capital Limited. And we all know that when you talk about analytics, you can't do analytics without having data, and probably reflects what one of the panelists said earlier. Analytics is also one of the tools that you use to elevate data to give you insights and intelligence, right? So just to give you a sense of what Ugrow Capital has already done, something unique is they're one of the few companies who have kind of developed an in-house methodology to develop their own credit score and data models for credit assessment, and that they have done by taking in specific industry sector parameters into consideration, so that the data model kind of throws out different credit scores and different credit assessments depending on which industry you come from, and it's not kind of standard across all industry segments. And I'm sure that could be done only if you have very high level of competencies on data engineering and understanding how to use data models and use predictive analytics. So Subrata, welcome to the webinar, and thank you for being patient in terms of me asking the questions to you. How do you think Ugrow has undertaken the entire journey of digital transformation? Because you're a young company in that sense, and therefore you would have the advantage of hindsight. What role did data play? Because you're obviously already having an analytics vertical inside of Ugrow to help you differentiate from your competitors. So how has Ugrow undertaken the entire journey of digital transformation, and what role has the data played?
Great question. Thank you for the kind introduction, Anand. And first and foremost, very glad to be here with the esteemed panelists, the veterans of the industry, and thank you for the opportunity. Yes, of course, I realize we are the youngest company. We've completed 2 years a few days back, and I have lots to share. But I think I would just share a little bit of context about what we do, and talk a little bit about the problems that we face when we go on doing our business of lending to NBFCs, and in that light explain our journey on digital lending. So we are Ugrow Capital. We are a BSE listed financial institution. We are a non-bank finance company with a pan-India presence. So we finance MSMEs, so small businesses of India, through a four-pronged distribution model, which comprises traditional branch business, a BFSI channel, an ecosystem financing channel, and a direct-to-consumer digital channel. Yes, and we are also sector focused. We have chosen to penetrate very deeply into our chosen sectors, which cover education, healthcare, food processing, and FMCG, chemical, manufacturing segments such as light engineering, electric. We have completed 2 years, but in these 2 years, which is kind of a turbulent time in the NBFC space, we have also crossed 1,000 crores of disbursements. Of course, looking to expand our footprint rapidly in the days to come. So having said that, right from inception, data technology, it is a very core part of our business. And for a lender like us, when we say digitization, it actually covers 2 things. One is, of course, it means making the processes paperless and digital. And it also means that the decisions that one takes in terms of credit penetration, the decisions are also automated. In the NBFC finance space, normally when you assess somebody to see whether you can give a loan to him or not, it is normally a physical process due to various factors. We'll talk about that. But when we have to digitize all of that, that decision science has to be has also to be digitized. Mr. Datta mentioned earlier toward the start of the meeting that collecting data is really of no use, unless we can contextualize it and we can extract it. And doing that for SMEs is critical to our digital journey. So why is this a little more complicated as compared to lending to individuals? So if you look at giving credit cards and personal loans to salaried individuals in urban cities, that space has seen a very sophisticated users of both digitization and data science. And that is understood very well by now. Yeah, so just let us just imagine if any of us have to apply for a credit card or a loan, we can just click on a bank's application, and within a few clicks we can get the money on our account. But within those few clicks, what's really happening is the bank is authenticating our identity, our documents, our records. They're also looking at my past data, and they're also taking a decision that it is okay to give a loan to this person and he will be able to repay. They're taking that decision within that 1 minute, and they're right. Because in banking, if the decision of lending is not taken right, then there's a cost, there's a price for us to pay. And the businesses run profitably because they're taking the decision rightly most of the time. We don't know this enough, but this data doesn't come out, but actually not everybody is approved. About 70 to 80% will be approved, 20 to 30% will get rejected. But the ones that get rejected, they are the ones who would have defaulted. So we are basically using data and making that science to eliminate a few customers, which eliminate in turn a larger number of customers who would default. So this disproportionate 80-20, this is the role that data plays in digitization. When we come and we are talking in the context of giving credit, giving loans to SMEs, and taking this decision for SMEs a little more nuanced and probably a little more complicated because of the diversity of the cash flows in various sectors of SME. Let's just take a few examples. For example, if it's a school and we are lending to a school, so a school normally the way it works is when it starts its business, it requires a large capital to set up infrastructure, the land building, and the income the school gets is maybe fees paid either quarterly or half yearly or annually. Much of that sometimes comes in the form of cash, and it manifests as cash deposits in his bank account. So one has to assess it in that way. Compare it to a distributor, let's say in a supply chain, let's say an FMCG distributor, who has his working capital lines, and he has a few transactions which is known downstream partners, which will reflect as few transactions of a certain value, which will reflect his GST invoice. And if you look at a small takeaway joint, you'll have a lot of transactions concentrated on the weekends of very small tickets. So each of these three have to be seen differently. There does not exist one common template to assess everybody. But yet we are here talking about how to digitize the process of giving loans to them. This is where giving loans to SMEs becomes a little more complicated. A one-size-fits-all approach does not work, and it takes time because a certain amount of human intervention cannot be done away with. So that is the context. And now when we see what we have done, we have attacked the problem head on. Our mission statement is solving the unsolved. We want to solve the unsolved needs of the SME sector. We are all aware that the SME sector is a large sector. 6.5 crore SMEs there contribute to 30% of GDP, but largely unserved by formal means. So we are trying to be a part of the journey and solve a little bit of that. And in doing so, we have taken one at the start of our journey. And you rightly said, Anand, if you start late, you have the benefit of hindsight. So we, from the first day, we decided that we will start with a digital process, which means that today we have a onboarding platform. We can give a decision on a SME loan on any of those sectors in 60 minutes. That means there are following components which are critical to the decision making. They are all concised and they're included in the 60-minute window, which include one, sector-specific statistical scorecards of each of the 8 sectors. We have done a massive exercise in partnership with a leading credit bureau of India at the start of a journey before even disbursing a single loan, and developed 8 sector-specific statistical scorecards, validated and implemented them on system so that every single application is scored in a real-time manner a decision comes out. It's a widely acclaimed proprietary algorithm. Second, the income assessment of any borrower, be it through balance sheet and P&L, be it through his bank statement, be it through his GST transaction report, that is completely digitized. The ingestion data is also digitized, either by a proprietary OCR solution, which can read a balance sheet P&L, or by an API integration, where we are ingesting a JSON format. You also said that prior to 2010, RDB used to be the most popular thing. Of course, and in our data also we see the same. Majority of the data is JSONs because we are working mostly with APIs. But we ingest that data. All the rules that we apply after the score, all the rules that we apply are all system coded in our own customized decision engine. This gives a decision within 60 minutes. After the decision is done, last but not the least, there's a leg where we need to go and talk to a customer. This is called personal discussion in the context of lending. Whoever is in the business, and we have our esteemed panelists from Aditya also, when we go and lend in SME lending, we'll go and meet the customer to check a few things at the end. That part is always traditionally done by an expert credit manager in face-to-face with the customer physically. We have templatized that process. We have made a first step by templatizing that and putting a structure to that, so that question answer is uniform and it is captured in the form of data. That is how we started on day one. Today we have crossed 1,000 crores of dispersals, and hopefully we are in a different stage of evolution of a journey. The journey is going on, and actually COVID has reset our notions of how much innovation one can do in how much time. But there was an abrupt halt, but now we are back. We are almost back as we speak. We have started disbursing, and now we have added further things to our digital repertoire, which means doing the interaction on a video, doing a video KYC, asking the questions on video, doing a digital signing of legal agreements. Today we have launched a new flagship program called Sanjeevani, which is meant to infuse much needed credit to ailing MSMEs and help them recover this period of growth. And that is powered by all the digital technology I mentioned and the data strength that I mentioned, plus e-signing and video KYCs, which also means we are ingesting more and more data, not only the JSONs, but also the videos and the images. What role data plays in this? Of course, I think it's obvious, but the predictive risk models, which help us eliminate the bad customers and take the decision. Today we have our repository of data, which is central. We have our architecture from day one is based on a zero data loss policy. Every single bit of data that we capture is stored centrally, mostly JSONs. There's also RDBMS, and there's also images, and now there's videos coming in. And this is in a central repository covering all the transaction processing systems. We have listed the originating system or the portfolio system or the accounting system. All this data is put in a centralized repository. You mentioned, Anand, the cost of bad data is $100 per record. And the cost of not using the data to take a decision could be so many more dollars in terms of incremental business that we could have got, or in terms of dollars that we are spending without any return. And which is why using the data and using it for data science to solve this problem is so much critical for us. And but at the end, we are, as an organization, as an NBFC, who are trying to solve the needs of SME, who is such a wide part in a country, both geographically and by contribution to economy. We have to be in the touch, which is why we call ourselves a fintech plus a fintouch. So we use all the tools of the day to call us fintech, yet we maintain the touch, and that is how we hope to solve the needs of the unsolved. That is our humble effort towards this.
Great, thanks, Subrata. Really good insight on how young companies think. And if I were to summarize what you said, you're basically saying that yes, you have a lot of capabilities, including tech capabilities, but you basically kept data at the center of it all. And which is why you were able to kind of make those decisions in 60 minutes, as against probably 6 days by other financial institutions. Yeah, I think I don't mind sharing with you that we are also as young as you grow. We are just globally 176 years old and about 25 years old in India. So I feel as young as you, Subrata. But one good factor is that the founders of our company kind of always knew that data was always to be central, which is why we kind of were in the business of data right from the start for some reason. So yeah, so that was so that's really good to know. On a lighter note, I just want to kind of say, I think Sundar talked about Netflix earlier and about digital transformation. Just as the lockdown began and everybody gets these 1,000-odd WhatsApp messages making a lot of jokes. One of the jokes that I got on digital transformation is, there was a survey being conducted in WhatsApp saying, give me the top 3 reasons as to why digital transformation is picked up in your company and how did you kind of take it forward. There was an option on customer satisfaction, there was an option on business revenues, etc., and profits, etc. But I think everybody chose the last option, which was COVID-19. Yeah. So, and in my company, I don't mind admitting we had MS Teams a year back. And only few people were using it. Now everybody's suddenly an expert in MS Teams. Yeah, so just 4 months of lockdown kind of does a lot of wonders to all of us. Great. So thanks a lot for everybody to be patient and hearing a lot of questions and answers on this. We already have quite a few questions coming on the chat window. There's one that I'm starting to publish now. One other topic, and this is not specifically to any panelist, so I'll make it open to the entire panelist and see if anyone wants to go for it. The question is, what is the one most important thing that company needs to avoid during digital transformation initiatives? And he's the gentleman here is stressing on the fact of one most important thing, which is more than sufficient to start derailing those digital transformation initiatives. That's the first part. I'll just stick to the first part of the question and see if any of the panelists wants to take.
Can I? Gautam here.
Yeah, please, Gautam. Go ahead.
Yeah. According to me, one thing that anyone can avoid is to have a project related to data is let us have a project of collecting data. Okay, I don't know whether it's a very obtuse answer. That means the objective of the project should not be I need data. The objective of the project should be I need to be more responsive, or what I am today, my response time is 1 hour, I need to reduce it to 10 minutes. So it's actually a measurable improvement. So it is an improvement project, response improvement project. Or I have 20% of rework in my manufacturing line, I need to reduce it to 10%. How can I use insights? And therefore data is important. You know what I'm saying? The project has to start from the business value and not with an intent of data collection or analytics. That is, according to me, is one most important thing.
Thanks, Gautam. I think yeah. To translate what you're saying, you're basically saying be very clear why we're having the digital transformation in the first place. And if that doesn't have a proper business justification in terms of measurable benefits to the organization, then there's no point in having a project, right? That's essentially, I think, what you're saying.
How would you measure it? And how would you measure it? Yeah, because most of the times the projects are in a desirous articulation. I want to be the number one in this market. That has no meaning. I want to have my exports improved by 200%. I want to launch 10 new models instead of 2, as I did last year. These are very desirous projects.
Anand, can I add one point here?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Abhay. So just before you start up, Abhay, I just want to make sure, because Gautam is on phone. So Gautam, we understood your point. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, that's all. No, I'm
okay.
Sorry for interrupting you, sir. Okay.
No, not at all, sir. It's very valuable input. Sorry, Abhay, just want to make sure, because he's on phone, he can't see us.
Absolutely,
just want to make sure. Yeah, go ahead, Abhay. All yours.
To extend on what Anand you said, and of course what Gautam said, right? I'll give an example here, right, which I touched base earlier on. This North American automotive company, their strategic goal was very clear, that customer experience should be theme behind any digital transformation projects or portfolio of initiatives which they are going to undertake in their organization, right? So when you say customer experience, typically you can think of, okay, in sales and marketing, the 3 touch point area of customers are pre-sales, sales, and after sales, right? But this customer was very clear in design area, in manufacturing area, in supply chain area. What are those use cases which are going to directly hit the customer experience, right? I am going to invest my dollars there itself, right? That was so clear in their mind. So, summing up this, right? What is one thing which you should not do is, really take up individual projects which are not aligned to the why of digital transformation, right? As I also earlier said, I think that's what I would also echo to what Gautam was saying, and you just referred it, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Abhay. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. Anybody else from the panel would want to also give their flavor on the question?
I think Anand, this is Sundar. I think just to add to what other people said, sometimes the people get into the transformation because of the technology, and technology is not always the right reason to get into a digital transformation. It is more the business benefits. As long as it is a customer-driven, business-driven, it justifies. Otherwise, the technology projects don't really do too well.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Ram, Shubhrata, or Jigar, any color from your end?
On the same lines, I mean, same point. So if there is no business outcome, don't take that. I think other panelists also covered it. So there is absolutely, I mean, just see for the business outcome. If it is not, I mean, what you're expecting, then you should not do that just for the sake of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just add one line to that. I just say that there are certain things which need a little bit of faith and effort until they start bearing the fruit. So maybe the first 6 months by design is the right thing to do, and then it starts bearing the fruit and breaks even in 12 months. So that aspect maybe one needs to take into consideration, and over a requisite period of time, which is acceptable, it should become breakeven.
Yeah, absolutely sure. Okay. All right. So as a moderator, I'll just take a quick liberty of giving my view as well. And this is out of obviously implementing several projects for several companies in my past life in the IT industry and also now in the data industry. I think one thing to the person who's asked this question, I would definitely want to say the one thing that I would avoid if I were to take a proper transformation project is avoid having the wrong set of people as the key stakeholders for the project. Yeah, that's my golden starting point and the ending point as well, because I always make sure that we have the right set of stakeholders who, first of all, are having a stake in the entire project, right? And they are very clear on why they are there. It's not just again for collecting data or for just for the sake of having a technology project. If you have the right set of people who are all having a common cause to achieve that business benefit, everything else falls in place. Whether it's the project charter, whether it's getting resources, budgets, supporting each other, and all needs to have all of them in that project team. The key stakeholders need to have only one goal, and everybody needs to either fail collectively or succeed collectively. Never a situation where some of them can succeed and some of them fail. Either everybody fails or everybody succeeds. It's like my analogy for this is again going back to the movies. If any of you have seen Lord of the Rings, right? The business objective was very simple. You got to put the ring in the fire, and you had all sorts of people, different kinds, different races, had probably no connections to each other, but they were all bound by a single business benefit. If you have that right set of people, I think everything else kind of succeeds, is my 2 cents on it. Yeah. Moving on, another question from the audience, how to build and form an advisory team to help and guide through such implementation and success of such initiatives. Any tips on how to build and form an advisory team?
I think it's okay. I think it's better to have a focused area for data management with having at least one data scientist to start with, actually putting together some of the things, as I mentioned during my talk, like some methods and services and patterns and procedures, how we can obtain data or integrate it, and for storage and security, those kind of strategies, they can work on it. I think there should be a if not a CDO, at least a data scientist, just to start with, going on a very focused approach, who can derive on all the strategies. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Excuse me, sir. Gautam here once more. Sorry for the interjection. May I take 10 seconds?
Please, Gautam, absolutely.
I actually differ with my fellow panelists with respect, sir. I think the journey has to begin with the business owner. Data scientist is a supportive role because he comes when the source of data, the logic and algorithm of treatment of data, and the output contexts are set. And all these are essentially emanating out of the business need and the business objective. So if there has to be an advisory, it should be led by the beneficiary. So because we can do a very good operation, but if the patient is dead, then the operation success is of no meaning. So we can have a fantastic data model, we can have very, very good IT strategy backing it up, but if the results, as we all began with this whole session, Anand, when you started, if it is not doing what it is meant to do, that is decided by the business owner, and the ownership also comes from there. He owns it, means he would make sure he writes it down with his blood on a piece of concrete, that this is the output I need, this is the insight I need. After that, how you treat the data, what logic you use, what technology you use, with hardware you use, is a part of experts who know their job the best. This is my view, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Gautam. Thanks for that color as well, and thanks, Ram, for the insight as well. Shubhro, I see you raising your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I cannot help. I'll just add 2 lines. So I think absolutely. So having a right set of team, you said, and Mr. Datta said the business owner is the main sponsor. One view I would like to add, and we have been trying to re-engineer several processes. Although we are a 2-year company, the people are all veterans of the industry, and we realized that sometimes the business owner, who's the sponsor of the project, may not be the best person to get into the details of the technicality. So although he sponsors the technology, but he may not be he cannot define what technology to use. So so there has to be that cross-functional team where sometimes technology is pointing out what can be the potential use of business, and then that in turn gets the sponsorship. So it's really a both-way interaction. And secondly, there really has to be a mix of traditional and new things. And talking in terms of data science, and I'm a data scientist. And on a lighter note, again, there's a WhatsApp forward which says a job requisition which says we need 12 years experience in TensorFlow. But TensorFlow is 5 years old. So if we really want to use things which are 5 years old, then we have to find people who by design will be young. This is a peculiar problem, and probably my limited 2 cents of input is the decision maker at the top of the organization. I have seen in my own company and management, and we have formed a cross-functional team which represents each share. That may differ a little bit from what it used to be, but that maybe that helps today.
Okay, all right. I know. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Abhay. Go, Jigar, please.
Jigar, yeah. So yeah, I would say that advisory is required in 3 disciplines. One is business area, where there's a linkage to the corporate strategy and business outcomes. So that is one discipline. The second is the data analytics stream, where whether it's a business analyst or a data engineering or data analyst who can do the job with some advisory. And the third area is IT, the hardcore IT, I would say, where the backend infra, the customer journeys, or the application management and workflows can be managed. So these are the 3 areas disciplines where I think the cross-functional teams or advisory is required.
Yeah, absolutely, Jigar. I think that's obviously good input. I know I'm conscious of the time. We are 5 minutes over, and I can see in the question panel there are quite a few questions that obviously I can't address all of them. But I'll just take one last question, and then what I'll do is I'll mail or have someone address these questions and send them over the email. The last question is someone from Mr. Jatin, actually from Voltus. His question is, what are the customer touch points that a B2B business must capture, especially considering that there are many stakeholders in the decision-making process? And how can data therefore help B2B business in personalization and improving customer satisfaction? So his question is basically on what are the various customer touch points that B2B business must capture, and how can that help in personalizing and improving customer satisfaction?
Okay, I will take that. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say the first would be the business function experts. There might be different business functions, for which business functions, we are trying to do this transformation. So, though, I mean, they are very important stakeholders, who can give the as is process, what kind of pain points, they have it, which needs to be addressed. I mean, they are very important ones. And, of course, we can, the other stakeholder would be on the, they are supporting teams, which is, their systems and stuff like that. So, I would say the more important stakeholder would be the business function users, the end users. So they would be the very important person to capture assets and try to understand the pain points, where we can bring in this transformation. Yeah.
Anyone else who want to give a color to that? Okay, all right. So I think we still have at least I can see about 9 to 10 questions that we have. Obviously, we can't take it in the time. So what I'll do is I'll try and have these questions addressed through the various panelists in an offline mode and try and see how best I can respond. At the outset, I would definitely want to call this webinar to a close. But before I do that, I must thank all the esteemed panelists who have taken the time to attend this webinar and give their insights and experience today. 1.5 hours is obviously a very, very valuable time at this point of time. So to everyone, including Jigar, Shubhrata, Ram, Abhay, Sundar, and of course Gautam, who's joined us over the phone. Thank you all so much for coming. I think this is a topic which is not just relevant, but we're all experiencing in our day-to-day lives when we are dealing in our professional, contacts, customers, etc. And I'm hoping that this webinar also added some value to you, as it definitely added to me and all the audience that was there today. Thank you so much to the audience as well who've logged in through the webinar, and thanks more importantly to Noina, Sushant, Nigel, and Kaustav, the team at DNB who've kind of coordinated with all the panelists and help us put this together in a lovely way. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. And as they say in the times of COVID-19, namaste.
Thank you. Thanks, Anand.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you, fellow panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.